There we go. Okay, thank you all very much for joining, and Benoit, if you'd like to get started, that would be great.
All right, very good. Thank you, Aliyah. So basically what we want to do in this session is, maybe you heard about Yang, right? And what I want to tell you is what are the tools that we have to help you validate your Yang modules, right? So, and maybe one or two sentences. I keep focusing on tools and metadata, as you will understand, but in this world of automation, it's key to understand that having Yang modules alone is not sufficient. We must have all the tools to help our operators automate the network, and we must have all the metadata. I'll come back to that, but to explain what are these Yang modules about. So let's start by analyzing what I would do as an ops AD and then see if a module is compliant or not. So, okay, let me share my screen. All right, the first thing I want to mention is that the step number one is validation, right? So if I take one module of yours, let's say the NetMod RFC 8022 BIS, the routing one, right? I'm not sure if AC is on the call. I cannot see the list of participants, but typically we've got three sources of information for validation. The first one is what you see in the tracker there. So by clicking on this Yang validation field there, you would have two things. The extraction, this is this XIM here. It tells you that I can extract this correctly. And that's the first thing you have to check. If we cannot extract your modules, there is nothing we could do. So the code begins and code ends is still important. I wish that one day we'll work directly from GitHub and have metadata in a link to GitHub to simplify all this, but we're not there yet. Now, the source number one of validation is this set of tools that Henrik is having, part of the data tracker, and you would do the same thing on whenever you submit the draft, right? The second thing, the second source of validation is yet another tool that we've been working on. This is the Yang validator. This was done because it was difficult to get all different validators. In there, we've got like pyang, confdc, and yanglint. Again, this is voluntary-based work, and we will be updating those latest revisions. But again, that's the first step in the right direction. The next one on which I spend quite some time on a daily basis is what I have on my website. And if you go there, this to on a regular basis to you with the latest validators. So typically, I try to validate and help the industry. So if I take the Yang data module extract from IETF drafts here, this is what it gives you. Now, let me close this window. I have in there even more validators. So the pyang minus IETF, pyang, and this minus IETF there, these are the guidelines coming from RFC 6087, right, which is about guidelines for writers and reviewers of Yang modules. And I see there is like a hand raised. Yes, just one second. I'll just finish this. And then there is like the confdc, which is Cisco but open source. There is the UMADM Pro, and there is yanglint. So yes, question.
Benoit, these are just fabulous. Could you, are there a place where I can find all of this? This is, of course, you've done great work here. I just need to make sure. I've been trying to scribble quickly all the pointers and the web stuff. Do you have any place we can just go to get all of this in one stop so I can go through this? Because I've got today and I've got to check a couple more modules in on this. So just aid. It went awful fast for me, or do I just listen to the recording?
No. So what I could do instead is that I could provide a kind of summary emails, like a more checklist, right, with pointers what I've been telling. Sounds like a plan?
Awesome.
Now, feel free to use that because we need to spread the news. Somehow I'm happy with routing because this is the area where I see most of the Yang modules developed, but we need to spread the news on all these tools, and that's why we're spending quite some time on those. By the way, out of the three sources of information here, I would say the one on my website, the one coming from the Yang extractor, or the Yang validator here, and the one coming from Data Tracker, I have the most up-to-date source of truth, I would say. And I don't want to say it in a humble way, but I keep updating those tools on a daily basis, and there is like a lot of work to be done on trying to integrate all the latest releases. So, yeah. And any questions so far on instruction? I saw someone raise his hand in WebEx. No? All right. Let me go on, but feel free to interact, right? It's not like a presentation, it should be a discussion. Now, regarding and by the way, Joe, feel free to also interact, right? Because Joe is the person who did the heavy lifting on the Yang catalog. The yangcatalog.org is a place that we want to be as a one-stop for all Yang modules, whether this is like all the Yang modules we know of in the industry, and we've got modules from vendors like Huawei and Cisco, and we want to get more. We've got modules from SDOs like IEEE, Broadband Forum, obviously the IETF, and also from open source projects such as like OpenConfig. So this one-stop place should start with a Yang validator. Then we need to update. Then the thing that we want to do is we could do a search on any Yang module. I'll come back to that. A Yang impact analysis, and view the Yang modules metadata. That's maybe the one I want to focus on. By the way, there is also Yang Explorer that will be updating soon, so don't pay too much attention to this one now. And there is like a regex validator. The metadata details, right? So let me continue with the example of AC's draft on RFC 8022 bis, right? So let's say, okay, there is like a module called IETF routing-2, right? So as an Ops AD, what I would do whenever you're telling me it's ready, I would introduce this IETF-routing. By the way, it auto-completes, right? IETF routing 2. And I want to get the details. Now, the details are basically all the metadata I've been mentioning. So which one do we have? So while doing this, okay, let me show you briefly a draft, and I will come back to the display later on. This is the catalog draft. The one we've been writing with Joe. This is the Yang module to access everything which is in this Yang catalog. So, all right, Yang module for the yangcatalog.org. If I would go there, it will tell me a long series of metadata information, right? Again, I will be providing the pointer, but let me go into the catalog himself. It's way cooler that way. Okay, the name, the revision, it comes from the IETF. Well, it could come from BBF or IEEE or wherever. This is a link to the schema. Is this generated from, right? In the IETF, obviously, it's not like what we call a native model, but it could be that we've got like vendor native models in there. Maturity, well, it could be like an RFC. It could be like a group document. It could be like a working initial, right, like a individual draft. We make those like generic terms because the BBF is following the same process and they're filling in the information about those models. Document name, the authors, the reference documents. Is this like a module classification? Is this like a service or not? Compilation, it passed. Okay, that makes me happy. Right, Yang 1.1, the description, the contact. Okay, now it's getting interesting from an OPSEDI point of view. The 3 type, this one is NMDA compliant, right? Instead of you know, I know that the transition to NMDA is not easy, right? So that's a quick way to check if your modules are compliant. It tells you where it's coming from, the working group, the dependencies, and dependent. Now, something that we've been implementing also is like implementation status, where we provide whether or not the module is implemented. Now, let's make it clear. We try to provide all these metadata, but it's only as good as the information of the metadata themselves. And there are 2 categories of metadata, the ones that you could extract from the module and the one that must be populated. Typically, the implementation there must be populated. Typically, whether this is like a good module whether this is a service module or a module type, then this is important to populate here. Right, so any questions on those metadata, or I'll go to the next steps, the next step. All right. Now the next step, if you look at the top here, we've got like the 3 view and the impact analysis. Again, if I speak, please, question.
What? Are you pulling in the metadata from someplace else, or are you expecting us to update the metadata? Sorry if I got off my mute button too soon.
No. Benoit, I'll explain this if you want.
Please.
So, Sue, the metadata, there's 2 kinds. There's what we call extractable, which means it comes directly out of the module, like the name, the revision, organization, that type of thing. Then there's the unextractable, kind of the true metadata, and that is things like maturity level, generated from. Those we try to find as much as we can from other sources. So things like maturity will come from examining it, and is it you know, if it's draft dash an individual name, we were able to know if it's an initial draft versus draft dash IETF. We know it's a working group draft as an example. Other things, especially when it gets down to vendor specific or vendor native modules, we need them to provide that, and as part of our API on the catalog, and I don't know, I'm sure Benoit will mention the contributor page, we have an API with an actual Yang modeled API with a short amount of per module unextractable metadata that we ask for from vendors or from other SDOs. But with the IETF, we have a lot of built-in tools and heuristics to be able to generate that. So when it comes to IETF specific drafts, it generally is kind of a fire and forget, meaning as long as it looks good and it's properly put within your draft, meaning that the Yang module is properly embedded within the draft, we'll be able to extract that. We'll be able to run the validators like Benoit mentioned and is showing now. We'll be able to run some heuristics to determine the canonical organization name, to figure out where it lives from a schema standpoint, to figure out if it's an initial versus a working group or adopted, I should say, versus ratified. So we're not really asking for a lot of additional or any metadata enhancements from IETF authors, just that the module is embedded and passes all of those data tracker validations so that we can consume it.
I have a special case I'll ask during the questions, which has to do with BGP. But this has been fabulous, Joe. Thank you for letting me know about that.
Sure. Benoit, if you're on mute, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Oh, that's bad because it was very interesting. So I just unmuted. So I was telling thanks, Joe. And by the way, I was writing the meeting minutes. That's why I was jumping between tabs. It was not in sync with what you were telling. Now, the next use case is that, okay, we've got this IETF routing, right? Now, let's see what the impact analysis is, because this is one of the core modules, right? So if I click on impact analysis there, and there are multiple ways to arrive to the impact analysis. I could just go from Yang catalog directly impact analysis. It will tell me, all right, so these are the modules that are known. So these are the modules, for example, this one here, IETF IPv4 unicast routing 2, that imports the IETF routing, right? And the IETF routing imports the IETF Yang type, but the IETF Yang type is an RFC. Look at the color coding here. You see blue, IETF RFC. Status here, green, IETF working group draft. And purple is individual. Now, this is a kind of a key module, right? And actually, it's not well known or imported. Now, let me take something different. Again, I'm going to remove this IETF routing module here, and I'm going to take a different one now, the IETF routing, right? That will lead to an interesting discussion about the naming convention. So if I generate this one, I see that it's used in all different places, right? And by the way, the one in red means compilation failed. Now, if AC is producing a new version of this IETF routing, then we want to warn all different people who are importing this IETF routing, hey, I'm updating this one. And you want to check if your module still validates. Now, within, I guess, a week from now, I will have a button here that will generate for me the list of draft authors of all the Yang modules that are using this IETF routing. So I won't have to go individually to, okay, IETF-beer, I have to contact the people, the author of that draft, and then the OSPF segment routing, and that draft, and the ISIS there. So this is like a pain. This could be automated. This is what we're working on right now. Now, to come back to a point that I mentioned, IETF-routing or IETF-routing 2, let's discuss the naming convention of NMDA compliant draft. Now, maybe it makes sense to keep the same name, right? If I make a comparison between this IETF routing and IETF routing 2, you would have to ask all the people here that are importing IETF routing to just go to IETF routing-2. Now, assuming that IETF-routing and IETF-routing-2 are semantically compliant or backward compatible, then I believe that you should be keeping the same name. It will be way easier from a tuning point of view. In the end, we need to have all these Yang modules to work together. Feedback on that one? Is AC on the line? Or Alia, do you want to provide any feedback on this? The naming convention for NMDA compliant module, or shall I take it offline?
AC is not here. I believe we talked in the guidelines about having the module in the appendix using the same name, but having the different module, the module name saying dash state, but the module, the namespace being dash state, but the module itself being named the same. And I think I haven't seen any reason why that's not still a good idea.
Right. So that may be something that you and I want you to follow on. Yeah.
Sure,
all right. So, okay. Thank you. What we discussed so far is the extraction, the validation. Please, Sue.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Again, I'm running into MDMA modules versus pre-MDMA modules. Do you have if you have a generic way of dealing with that as far as the module before MDMA, the module after MDMA, if you have something general about that, otherwise I can send you my specific concern. Again, I'm working off a couple modules, Trill base, taking some of the Trill modules into MDMA versus not, and then doing BGP. BGP is a major module, and as you know, or maybe it probably is logical from what Ali and Alvaro's taking, we are doing an NVMA module, and there was a previous BGP module. So if you have something like that, please let me know.
So that's part of what we were trying to address with the NMDA guidelines, and there's a draft that some of the folks in NetMod were kind enough to write. I'm trying to find it right now, I'm afraid, which is why I'm being a little slow.
If you could put that in the chat, Mindo.
Yes, I will find it and do that. The other piece there is I had a couple documents that I just did an AD review on, the VRRP and the RIP, which were also written before the NMDA guidelines came out. And Rob Wilton has a very, very nice tool to help do the conversion, because this is really a presentation layer issue as opposed to anything else. And so it can be pretty straightforward to do the conversion. And I know that he was able to produce suggested conversions for those two drafts quite quickly using his tooling. So he's also a good person to follow up with.
Right. So I wanted to mention 3 pieces of information. Yes, there is Rob Wilton is my key person, my key go-to person. He's got a tool to do this. He's been also working on a wiki with some typical questions. Every single time that there is a questions on this NMDA transition, he posts the question answer over there. So I'll make sure that I have this in my notes. And for the BGP one, then let's take it offline if this is specific to a module. Now, the next thing I want to mention, right? So we've been discussing the extraction from IETF draft, the validation, all the metadata, the impact analysis. Now, if you're a module designer, maybe the next thing you want to do is a regex validator. We've been working on this tool. So typically what you could be doing in there is directly cut and pasting what you have into the pattern field of a Yang module and do a test string here.
Benoit, just go to http yangcatalog.org :5000/Yanger. It's Peter's development version. It's got the options for the two HTTP. It's got the two options for this will be going into production, Yang RE. This will be going into production, so it'd be good to show them the two different versions of the validators, with Yanger being selected by default, or Yang validator being selected by default.
Right. So as you can tell, we're working on this actively, a couple of us. And by the way, this is a nice segue to say that we've been working on these tools since the first IETF hackathon. let me stress again, the Yang modules alone are not enough. We must have the toolings and the metadata around it. So please come and attend the IETF hackathon and work on these tools. Now let me show you a different way to approach this this catalog, right? So the catalog is also there if you are a user of Yang modules. And a user, I mean, okay, I want to search for something that exists. So what is of interest to you? I don't know. What is a good search in the routing area? IPv4, or what is a good type def that you've got in the latest document? Maybe you've got like IP address or what? Let me do this. All right, so it gives you all the different modules. And by the way, I want to stress something here. We've got plenty of search options, right? And the search options are, I could have a regular expression. I could include all the Yang modules that are generated from MIP modules. Only give me the latest revision. I want to search a module name, node description, only Yang.0, Yang 1.1, or any of the keywords of Yang. Right? Okay, let me do my search again. And then the value of this is that, again, if you are a module designer, you could be searching, I'm searching for a type def, an IP address. Okay, I could do that. Now, if you're a module user, you want to search if something exists already. And by the way, you see that there are different modules from different vendors, but okay, we are at the IETF, so let me search IETF as an organization, right? Now, you see like names, local IP address, virtual IP address. Okay, that comes from the IETF. And you see whether the compilation status is passed, unknown. So, you know, I mentioned a couple of times like a tsunami of Yang modules, right? I've seen that coming. We see that coming. Now, it's difficult for operators to, or even like module designer, to know what exists and which Yang module should be looked at in this ocean of Yang modules, right? So it will depend on the metadata. So does it come from like an SDO, like an industry standard? Is it like a native model? Is this like something which is ratified, like you know, an RFC? Is this imported multiple times and you can sort on all these fields, right? Does the validation fail or pass, and why? So this is a way to look at everything which is available in Yang models. If I put my OPSAD hat on, I don't want the redefinition of all these fields in industry, right? This defeats the purpose of having all these Yang models. So this is also a thing that you should be checking from time to time, right? I understand my search is not right, but if you'd be searching on segment routing, for example, or whatever you want, or multicast, that could be a way to go to the right module. And again, you've got in there like the impact analysis, the tree view. Let's assume that you want to say, okay, let's search on segment routing and see what comes out of it. Or let's say just routing. We'll have plenty, right? And okay, I want to say IETF for the organization. And this one sounds like the one I want. Okay, beer. And I could go into the module details, the metadata, or the tree view or impact analysis. Let's look at tree view. And there I could expand on anything that I want here and have the definition, including the path, which is something which is like very useful to extract if you were going to use RESTCOM, for example. All right. So, okay, what have we covered? Extraction, validation, module details, the metadata, the impact analysis, the regex, the tree view. So, Joe, do you want to discuss what you decided to do with the Yang catalog and how we put data in there and the contribute page, etc.?
Discuss the contribution? Sure. Can you go
me to go there? I don't want to put you on the spot, right?
No. Go. Probably doesn't make sense to throw the ball around. So, Jeff, if you go back to the main page, jump on over to the contributions page.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned earlier, as Benoit mentioned, right now, yangcatalog.org serving as a landing page. Ultimately, we're putting in place these metadata capturing and processing systems and an API to serve all of the tools we're developing, so that we can start to chain these things together very easily and develop kind of multiple streams based on use case. So that's evolutionarily where we're trying to go with this, but it does all stem from, or it all goes back to getting this metadata. So while we can serve it up, and while we're doing a very good job, I think, with the IETF data, just because we've kind of learned how to digest that. When it comes to other SDOs like BBF, MEF, who's the other? One of the others we have in there. IEEE, thank you. Don't know why that skipped my head. We need them to provide us that metadata. And so when we stood up the API, we wanted to make sure we documented this fairly well as to how one can do that. So at the top here, we have kind of different use cases. You're a vendor, SDO, and you write modules, essentially, and you want to provide your metadata there. Or maybe you're a vendor, and you want to provide implementation data. So one of the things that we haven't really developed UI for yet is we want to be given a vendor, given a platform, given a software release, show what modules are implemented in that particular vendor platform software. Because this can give you an idea of what you might want to further search for, like use that as your search scope. Use that as a starting point for exploration, for script creation. So we want vendors like Cisco, like Juniper, Huawei, HPE, all of them to contribute that type of data. And then there's also the consumption. I'm just average user. I would like to use the API to search the catalog, and you may want then to delete data out of it, because as a catalog, we're kind of that library. We want to store as much as we can. We want to be that full and historical repository. And then there, as Benoit kind of pitched earlier, we're always looking for people who want to help develop tools or refine tools or put their fingers to work for the Yang catalog. So we've open sourced all of the tools, the API, everything that we're doing. We have the draft that defines the module we're using that the API uses. So we've got that code out there for people to look at, for people to hack. So this is really, if you're interested, if you want to participate, if you work for another, or you interface with another SDO, or you work for a vendor, we encourage you to look at this and use this as a point of being able to provide that information. Especially around platform implementation, because we think there's a lot of, for all vendor customers, we think there's a lot of use in being able to really understand what is supported with the given network elements that people have.
All right, thank you, Joe. So one last thing I want to mention is we extract all our Yang modules from GitHub, and this is where we get all of our information. So if you want to contribute because you're part of a different SDO or vendor, this is where we put everything, right? So, okay, we've been showing you a tour of all the tools that we are working on, telling you also which tools will be coming in the future with the regex, which is almost there, and with a button to provide the list of authors of all the drafts that import the Yang modules that we care about. So any more questions on your side? I guess that you're all working on validating your Yang models, right?
Actually, Benoit, if we're in the middle of going through and trying all these tools and we run into some problems or want to chat with someone, how do we get some help? If you got any, I guess I'm asking for Yang tools for dummies and a dummies Yang tool dummies mail list to sort of get help.
Right. So I guess that you could start with the Yang doctors and myself. The thing is that you see a kind of nice GUI that Joe has been working on. Behind the scene, there are a lot of tools and a lot of people. I could think of Radek behind YangLint, or Andy Bierman behind YangDump Pro, or Peter on the regex, or Miroslav on a specific API. So maybe your best bet, and if it's specific to a tool, then I could give you the point of contact. Like the recipe on how to use all these tools, let's see if the help page on this Yang catalog helps. And then if not, you might want to provide maybe some feedback. Yeah, you've been compiling and validating Yang modules for some time now, right? So again, this is like all voluntary-based work, so help is also welcome, even for feedback.
So there's also info@yangcatalog.org. So if it's one of these tools that you're having a problem with, like Benoit said, there might be a number of people we would have to involve. But if you send to there, then that hits a number of us, myself, Benoit, and a couple of others, that we could point you to the right person, or if we're the right person, we can immediately reply back. So at the bottom of the page, there's the work in progress disclaimer, and we have an announce list that you can subscribe to, and you can email directly info@yangcatalog.org.
One other question, and then I'll try to stay off and let everyone else ask questions. Phil Schaefer showed me some really cool tools on how to write Yang module drafts that I might pass on to my working group list. Do you guys have a link to that? Is that someplace we can find? Because he said there were stuff in GitHub you could download and tools you could use to make life easier. That would really speed up some of my switch over to NMDA.
So yes, I received the feedback on those tools. Interestingly enough, in the very first hackathon that we did years ago, we created such a tool for the Open Daylight people, because in the world of open source, it's kind of embarrassing to ask people to write a TXT draft to post to the IETF just to include a Yang module that people would extract afterwards. So it was one of the first tools that we did, and I've been trying to find back the code for that. We don't have it any longer. Now, having said that, there is something in which I believe way more than creating drafts. And that's something that I'm trying to have an experiment. If you look at this draft, draft class Semver, right? This is the semantic versioning and structure for the IETF. Please review this. This is a way to use GitHub with some tags information, and we would have like the Yang modules directly into GitHub. We start to do this in netconf and netmod. Okay, let me explain what the issue is. I go with my old tools every morning and I check the diffs compared to yesterday. I download all the drafts, extract all the Yang modules, get the diff, and then I drop an email to people, hey, pay attention to that error, right? Now, if I'm in a good mood, I would just investigate this and see exactly what the issue is. Now, I have to tell to the people via email, go and change this in your Yang module. With this draft, and since I have all the workgroup chairs here, please investigate if you could have this process in your working group. I want the Yang modules to be in GitHub. So when I have investigated what the issue is, I could do in no time a pull request saying, okay, change the field from blah to something else, right? And then it would be just a question to say accept by the chairs or by the draft authors, and boom, they would have the perfect Yang module directly. So instead of having a tool to create a draft, I would prefer that we work with this mechanism here. It makes sense, Sue?
Sounds like an outstanding idea after having struggled through pieces. I believe I have 2 out of my 3 working groups with GitHub. I'll add the 3rd one this week.
Very nice. Then this was an efficient meeting for me. So what else? I think that's about it that I wanted to cover. Joe, is there anything else that we should be covering? Or Aliyah?
I think you hit everything.
Yeah, nothing
right.
from my side except the standard. We're trying to get these documents and the models moving along, and I know that a number of them are finally starting to come through the process, but it would be really excellent to take a look at these and think not just about the impact of your own particular, the particular drafts for your working group, but looking at the implications of particular Yang models and what they, what the implications of them taking a long time are, and encouraging those that have more dependencies upon them, because we need to get them out. Other than that, that's it for me. Benoit and Joe, thank you both very much.
Can I just say, Joe, just two more things before closing? I want to stress the timing issue of this. This is getting very important to get those modules out. Something also, as a group chair, that I advise you to do from time to time is to take all the working group documents in your working group to get the Yang modules and to get the impact analysis, right? The impact analysis, I could have IETF routing, and I could add some more. IETF IPv4 unicast routing, and IETF IPv4 v6 unicast routing. Now, what it gives you is actually a list of all the interrelated Yang modules into your working group. All right, this one is like a key one, right? But if you play with the direction there, like only the one that are imported, or only the one that import mines, right? And I never get those right. But then it tells you, okay, what are the next one that we need to work on, right? And it gives you like the bottleneck in black there. Oh, we should be working on the NMDA compliance IETF interface first because it's important in routing. And that view will provide you a kind of overview of what's happening in your working group and will tell you what the next bottlenecks are and what to focus on. And the thing I would like someone to work on the next hackathon is maybe having this viewed and automatically from the working group, right? From the tracker, we could just click working group, show me all the Yang modules. It would provide this list with all the extracting Yang modules, and we have information, right? And then we could say, oh, this one is different, let me focus on this one, and boom, I've got like multiple views of what's happening. And thanks, Aliyah, for the extra time.
Absolutely. Anytime. Okay, so thank you all very much. I am going to stop the recording now.